Okay, so I think after that one, and just before we get BB back, it's a good time to read the interviews. But let's read this mail first. Actually, no, we'll do that next time because that'll be an order. So we got some interviews to do, haven't we? So, the terrorist view of Bridges, Die Hard Man, 3 years ago. Bridges HQ. The first expedition set off without any problems. Both the advance party and the rear guard are en route to the west coast as we speak. They haven't reported any trouble with terrorists and the like yet, but the further out they get, the greater the danger. There's a hell of a lot of separatists out there that who want nothing to do with the UCA. Some more extreme than others, perhaps, but there's no denying where they stand. Seems like just yesterday it was only ideological differences, strongly held opinions at worst. But then Chiralium started messing with people's heads, turning extremists into demons, mules into gestalt, and debate into violence. And now we're headed west into their territory, invaders coming for their freedom. They're waiting for us, minds made up and guns in hand. Amelie and the others aren't looking for a fight. She's going to try and talk sense to people, convince them to join us. If all the cities sign on, our nation can rise again. No one wants to take anything from these people. Only give them back what was lost. If only they could understand that. And now think of it, has Higgs actually said, given us reason why he doesn't want to join the UCA, or, what his motivation is or anything like that? Okay, the history of the Odradek, Hartmann, 2 years ago, Bridges HQ. Does the name Sigmund Freud mean anything to you? He was a famous psychologist, the most famous of them all perhaps, but I digress. Freud formulated one of his most famous theories after observing his grandson playing with a spool of thread. The boy would throw the spool under the bed, thus ensuring that he could not see it anymore. He would then wind the thread into his hand, gradually drawing the spool back towards him until it became visible again. He repeated this process several times. It was apparently a game he played whenever his mother was elsewhere. Freud proposed that the process of concealing and rediscovering the spool was a coping mechanism, a way in which the boy could put his mind at ease. You see, the boy was in control of the spool. He could make it disappear and reappear at will. This helped him to comprehend his mother's absence, not as something sudden or irrational, but as something controlled, and therefore not a cause for concern. A novelist named Franz Kafka later coined a term for this spool of thread, Odradek. However, he conceived it as an object capable of speech and autonomous movement, a mysterious being neither dead or alive. The Odradeks we use are perhaps not so different. These interfaces, through which we experience our BB's perception of their surroundings, are not unlike spools of thread, a connection between our world and the other side, the living dead, human and BB. Okay, near-death experience, Hartmann, 1 year ago, Hartmann's lab. Until relatively recently, death could only be studied from the perspective of an external observer. As the experience of one's own death could not be communicated to another, a collaborative investigation of the phenomenon was fundamentally impossible. But through the examination of subjects in near-death states and the cataloguing of their experience, we have at least been able to bring the scientific method to bear on this most final of frontiers. Even those in a state of so-called brain death exhibit signs of consciousness. What could this possibly mean? Moreover, why do some on the brink of death report out-of-body experiences? Furthermore, why do so many of those who have such experiences describe the same sensations of being beckoned back towards a distant light? Many had argued that these commonalities were evidence of an objective reality, of a place beyond life. If nothing else, they at least suggested that death was not an instantaneous change of states, but a process. The beach has since proven much of this beyond a doubt, and the dead rising again as BTs through necrosis demonstrates this process in action. The place beyond life is no longer a theoretical possibility. Its existence must be taken for as incontrovertible fact. Cave paintings and stencils, Hartmann, 1 year ago, Hartmann's lab. Cave paintings provide an invaluable window into the lives of our ancestors, how they lived, what they experienced. Some have been preserved here on our continent, although most have sadly been lost in void outs. The oldest cave paintings of all are believed to date back to 64,800 years or more, but all of these are, or perhaps were, in Europe. What's become of them, I wonder? Have they too been obliterated in annihilation events? If not, are the caves containing them now infested with BTs? Does Europe still exist, even? One cannot help but worry that these vital records have been forever lost to us, but I digress. These first paintings were likely made by the Neanderthals. They were crude depictions of creatures such as deer, bison, and horses, interspersed with stenciled outlines of large hands. Some asserted these are the signatures of primeval painters. But could they not also be depictions of BT handprints? Could our ancient relatives have been trying to tell us something, or issue a warning? Is it perhaps one flight of fancy too far? BTs and void outs, Hartmann 3 years ago. The following conclusions are largely derived from a handful of eyewitness accounts. While I would advise anyone to take them with a grain of salt, I still believe they are worth sharing. BTs pursue their prey through a multi-step process. In the first, they begin searching for a target. The handprints left behind is evidence of this behaviour. Upon detection, one or more BTs will attempt to seize their target and drag it towards a much larger entity. To clarify, however, a void out does not occur at the point of contact between the giant and the human, but only once a human has been subsumed into the giant's body. We think this may be because this is the only place where antimatter is present within the entity. It goes without saying that BTs are entirely different from any creature that is of this world, and we have much to learn about them still. One thing is certain, however, we must come to understand them, else we may never overcome the existential threat that they pose. Okay. Evolution, Death Stranding, and the Fear. Hartmann, 1 year ago, Hartmann's lab. Death has been Homo sapiens' constant companion for every step of our evolutionary journey. Our cultures and civilizations have been built with an awareness of our relationship with death, the extent to which we can accept and live with it. Out of fear of the inevitable decomposition and destruction of the flesh, our ancestors developed elaborate embalming techniques, death masks and the like. Indeed, the mask has ever been a symbol of the soul that transcends this world to exist for eternity in the next. The mummies and sarcophagi of ancient Egypt are but one instance of this. Honoured individuals were given masks and placed inside sarcophagi in order to be preserved for eternity, thereby transcending death and attaining immortality. Paintings and photographs are no different, really. They are simply more modern variants of the Egyptians' masks and sarcophagi. Indeed, all of humanity's crowning achievements, art, language, writing, are arguably a reaction to death, an expression of our desire to overcome it. They are great feats born from fear, and one might even go as far as to say that it was the primal fear of death that drove the evolution of our ancestors into Homo sapiens in the first place. In fact, I would go further still. I would posit that it was this fear that brought about the Death Stranding itself. It has certainly seemed more and more plausible of late. Bridges needs Homo ludens. Hartmann 2 years ago, Hartmann's lab. I have already spoken at length about the new varieties of man that have emerged in the wake of chiral pollution and from the resulting phobias. Homo demens, Homo gestalt, not to mention those touched by dooms. This much is common knowledge. I, however, would posit that we could further categorize the humans of this day and age. Take our comrades Mummer and Lockney, for example. They are creators, are they not? People who use tools to make things, craftspeople, Homo faber. Consider Dead Man, one who looks the dead in the eyes every day, one who takes their organs as his own. His relation to death is transcendental, sublime. It is, in essence, his faith, and he a Homo religiosus? As for myself, Homo eloquens, a linguist. Loquens? Yeah, Homo loquens. A linguist, one who seeks to understand this world through the language of science and logic. There is, however, another very special type of human, a breed that would serve Bridges rather well, Homo ludens, they who play. Be it deliberate or unintentional, Homo ludens unite people, creating culture, shaping the very world around them. Not through violence, nor laws or proscriptions, but rather through metaphorical acts of play. I know of only one person who matches this description, the one they call the Great Deliverer, Sam Porter. Despite Die Hartmann's best efforts, however, his whereabouts are still unknown. Lochner and Malingen. Lochner, 3 years ago, Bridges HQ. You know what we used to dream about? Seeing what's beyond those clouds up there? We spent our whole lives beneath a chiralium sky. It's all we've ever known, but we also know that the world used to be so much bigger. Our parents told us. There are researchers who worked for NASA, though these days most people wouldn't know what that was. It went up in smoke around the same time America did, and all our parents' work went with it. But we still have our dreams, the one thing our parents gave us that can never be taken away. Malingen and I were named after a pair of craters left by meteors which struck the Earth 450 million years ago. Those craters are proof that this is something bigger, that we exist within a vast interconnected universe. Our names serve as a reminder of this fundamental truth, symbols of our parents' hope that our isolation is only temporary. That's why we join Bridges too, to bring the people of this country together again, and to one day reunite this planet with the greater universe that surrounds it. Okay, prepper interview the photographer. The photographer's mother 1 year ago, personal shelter. It wasn't that long ago that we moved to this shelter, the three of us. Before that, we used to live in the city, until my husband up and said we had to leave. He was so insistent, and I didn't have any choice but to go along with it. I couldn't take care of our daughter by myself. He said he was sick of city life, and I can't say I don't understand at all. I mean, Timefall may not have been an issue, or BTs, but I can see how a safe and comfortable life might become suffocating. Our daughter might be happy and healthy, but we're the exception. Hardly anyone's even having children these days. You don't need a crystal ball to see where the world's headed. My husband says we're bound for extinction, says nobody's doing anything about it. People would rather stick their heads in the sand and try to wait out the storm. If we don't figure out the Death Stranding and fix this world of ours, that's all she wrote. My husband says that a lot, that maybe he's just a guy with a camera, but at least he's doing something and so on. He's out again somewhere, investigating something. Recently he started taking our daughter with him, teaching her to take photos of rocks and murals and the like. I'm glad they're spending time together, and I know it's good for education, but I still hate it when they go out and leave me here to wait and pray that they come home safe and sound. Prepper interview the mountaineer. Mountaineer husband 1 year ago. People aren't meant to stay cooped up inside or live in one place forever. It's not natural. Exploration's in our DNA. The great outdoors is where we're supposed to be. You know our ancestors started out in Africa, right? Well, they didn't just stay there, did they? They wanted to try and find a better life, a better home. That's why humanity spread all across the planet. And as we've travelled, we've evolved. Little by little, we've grown tougher and smarter. Even our immune systems have become stronger. But if we stop moving, stop exploring, that all stops too. We stagnate as a species, maybe even regress. That's why we can't hold up in cities. There's a whole universe beyond those coral clouds that I'd love to explore someday, but if that's not possible, then I want to at least get as close as I can, climb the biggest mountains, go as high as I can go, and try and see what lies beyond. And I want to do it with the love of my life, the world-class mountaineer who showed me the beauty of this place, my guiding star. Together, there's no peak we can't summit. Prepper interview the doctor. I know what you're thinking. Why is this prepper claiming to be a doctor? Don't worry, you're not the first. Rest assured that I really am a doctor. I even have a medical license, though the governing body that issued it to me is long gone, so I won't be offended if that counts for little. But license or no, people still need doctors. Get sick too, you know. That's not so hard for you to get your head around, is it? Most folks haul themselves to a city hospital when there's something wrong, but out in the boonies that's not really an option. But we can't just leave those people to die. You know full well what will follow. And so I do what I can to help. Around here, I'm the only one who people can rely on to keep them alive. Whenever I'm needed, I try and find someone to transport me to a patient's residence, but that's hardly the most efficient approach, and it doesn't endear me to the porters either. I hear that Bridges is trying to bring everyone into their chiral network. If it's as good as I've heard, it would be a real game changer. I could perform all sorts of diagnosis and even some treatments without having to leave my shelter. I hope you manage to extend it here soon. There's a lot of people out here counting on us both. Okay, there we go. And next time we'll, probably do the Mountaineer, go back to the Mountaineer, build up our zipline network, and then go over and finally get into Hartman's lab, even though we've already been there and he rudely didn't let us in, but there we go.